Well, welcome back, delegates and alternates, and congratulations. You have made it to part 3 of this 4-part video series designed to help prepare you for the caucus and executive sessions of our upcoming CRC. We've thrown a lot of information at you the first 2 sessions, and in this third installment, we're going to be covering society-level positions, specifically the board of directors and society-level committees. So, without further ado, here's part 3. Okay, so we're going to look at ASHRAE's organizational structure, and we're going to focus today on the Board of Directors and Executive Committee. Now, this is admittedly one of the more challenging parts of our nominating discussions because as chapter leaders, you may or may not have as much familiarity with some of the candidates that we're going to be discussing. We're going to review the roles and responsibilities of each board-level position. What you'll want to do is first identify individuals from your own chapter or region whom you feel may be candidates for these positions. Now, if you're not sure whether or not someone meets qualifications, please look at their bios, which you should have access to. Then, start looking at active volunteer members outside of your region. Think about the leaders you've interacted with in the past. Talk to your regional leaders. Talk to chapter members who are involved at society level. Review the bios of current and past Board of Directors members. The Regional Nominating Committee can help get you access to these bios. Yes, there is a lot of information to process, but again, it may sound like a broken record, but it is your responsibility as a representative of your chapter to familiarize yourself with the process and the candidates. So let's take a look at the election process. Now, if you think this looks a little bit familiar, well, it should, because we already went through it for the most part in part 2 when we were discussing the election process for the DRC. The DRC, as you recall, is a board of directors position. So the process for the positions that we're going to be covering today are going to be very, very similar. For the most part, the chapter's regional committee, the CRC, that's you guys, will make recommendations for president-elect, treasurer, 4 vice presidents, 3 directors at large, or DALs, and the DRC depending on the year. If you're wondering why we don't make recommendations for the office of ASHRAE president, well, that's because the individual selected as president-elect automatically becomes president the following society year, and we're going to cover this in more detail in a few minutes. ASHRAE staff will confirm the candidate's qualifications and willingness to serve. The list of nominees will then be forwarded to the Society Nominating Committee, the SNC, which, as we saw in Part 1, is comprised of members and alternates representing all 15 regions, board-elected members and alternates, a vice chair, and a chair. The Society Nominating Committee meets at the fall nominating meeting to review all of the bios. Very candid and in-depth discussions are had about each of the candidates, their experience, their level of participation in ASHRAE, and their leadership qualities. The members then go through an extended voting process to develop a shortlist, if you will, of proposed candidates. No final decisions are made at that fall meeting. Then, at the winter conference, the SNC meets again, and the process of reviewing the candidates is repeated until the final slate is developed. This slate then goes to the members for the election, and that election is held at the annual conference. Now, I recognize that this may seem a bit confusing, particularly for members who aren't as familiar with that process, and there can be a level of frustration when they see only one name on a ballot. They feel like they're being forced to approve candidates on a ballot that they had no say in developing. They feel disconnected from the process itself, which is why it's so important that you engage them. Reach out to all of your chapter members and make sure that they know that you will take their recommendations and concerns and present them at CRC. As the Regional Nominating Committee, it's our responsibility to listen to the voice of the chapters and make sure that your voices are heard at society level. Everything starts with the members. Okay, so let's look at the Executive Committee, or EXCOM. Here's the 2018-19 Executive Committee. Sheila Hayter is, of course, our 2018-19 Society President. As I mentioned earlier, Darrell Boyce, as President-elect, will automatically become President for Society year 2019-2020. Chuck Gullidge serves as ASHRAE Treasurer. Now, the Treasurer position does not automatically ascend to President-elect, though strong consideration is typically given, and we're going to get into more detail later. Jeff Littleton serves on the board as Secretary and Executive Vice President as ASHRAE's Chief Staff Officer. The Chief Staff Officer is appointed on an annual basis by the Board of Directors. This is a non-voting position. Then we have the 4 Vice Presidents. Vice Presidents serve 1-year terms, but are eligible to serve 2 terms total. Now, we're not going to go into detail into each of the positions, or this would be a very, very long video. But I do want to encourage you to review the roles, responsibilities, and qualifications, which can be found in Volume 4 of the Rules of the Board and the Nominating Committee Manual of Procedures Reference Manual. You'll find links to these documents below. One thing I do want to note is that at the 2018 Annual Conference in Houston, the Nominating Committee passed several motions that clarify the qualifications as listed in that reference manual. These changes may not yet be on the website. So I've tried to update the requirements on the slides that we're about to go over, but if you have any questions, if there are any inconsistencies, please talk to your regional nominating team. So, starting with President-elect. The President-elect automatically becomes the next society president. So it's important when evaluating candidates for this position, you keep in mind that you are essentially electing a future president. The President-elect serves as the assistant to the president and also serves as chair of Members' Council and the President-elect Advisory Committee, or PEAC, along with other council and committee responsibilities. This position does require extensive travel, approximately 60 to 80 days per year, which includes attendance at the two conferences, board meetings, XCOM meetings, Members' Council meetings, PEAC meetings, and 4 CRCs. In order to serve as President-elect, the candidate must have previously served as both a director and a vice president. We will be providing a list of past directors and vice presidents for your reference prior to CRC. Previous service as Society Treasurer is not a requirement, but the duties of President-elect and future President do require having a very strong background in financial matters and the finances of ASHRAE, which is one of the reasons why in the past the Treasurer has traditionally been elected to President-elect. Having said that, as the delegates and alternates, the decision of who you would like the region to support for any of these positions is entirely up to you. Again, the nominating committee is here to support you and to provide you with the information you need to make the right decisions. All right, so next up is Treasurer. The Treasurer serves on XCOM, the Board of Directors, the Finance Committee, and the Investment Committee. The Treasurer is responsible for society funds and the books of account. Approximately 35 to 40 days of travel is required, attending the two conferences, the board meeting, XCOM meetings, Finance and Investment Committee meetings, and 3 CRCs. In order to serve as Treasurer, a candidate must have previously served as a director and must meet the 5-year member, capital M member grade requirement. Ideally, this is a candidate who has previously served as a vice president with previous experience on the Finance Committee. All right, moving on to the vice president positions. There are 4 vice presidents that are eligible to serve 2 one-year terms. Typically, there are 2 vice presidents on their first year and 2 on their second year. So it has been common in the past to confirm first-year vice presidents for a second term and nominate 2 new vice presidents at every CRC. But again, that is your decision to make. The vice presidents are members of XCOM, the board of directors, and serve as chairs or vice chairs of one of the 3 society councils. Approximately 40 days of travel per year is expected, attending meetings shown here in addition to other meetings and assignments. As far as qualifications go, in order to serve as a vice president, the candidate must have previously served as a director and must meet the 5-year capital M member grade requirement. Next up, Directors at Large, or DALs. There are 9 DALs that serve 3-year terms, similar to the DRC. The terms are staggered such that at any given CRC, we're only nominating 3 new DALs. DALs serve on the Board of Directors and are appointed to 1 council and at least 1 committee. Now, where DRCs come from the grassroots side, representing the regional members, DALs typically come from the technical side. They're responsible for the technological interests of society. Approximately 30 days of travel per year is expected, attending the meetings shown here. Now, in order to serve as a DAL, the candidate must have previously served as a voting member, preferably the chair, of a technical, standards, or project committee, and must meet, of course, the 5-year capital M member grade requirement. So, how do you identify potential candidates? Again, as I'd mentioned, look first at the past leaders of your chapter and region. Look at their bios and access a society participation report that shows which members have been involved on society level committees. And finally, look outside your chapter and region for potential candidates. So that's all we have for the Board of Directors position. We're going to shift gears now and take a look at some of the ways your members can get involved at the society level with various committees. Now, we've seen this organizational chart before, but most of our focus has been on the board, the nominating committee, and members council. But you can see there are a lot of other committees all run by volunteer members like yourselves. How do you get involved? How do your members get involved? Well, there are actually a number of different ways. A person can nominate a member or even directly self-nominate on ASHRAE's website at www.ashrae.org/communities/volunteer. There's a lot of great information on this website on the various volunteer opportunities and the minimum requirements for each position. We're not going to go over all of these right now, but again, everything is on the website. Another route for nominations is the CRC, which may carry more weight as it represents the recommendations of a region rather than just an individual. So here's a list of society committees where you can make recommendations to the president-elect. The tasks, responsibilities, and membership requirements vary significantly from committee to committee, so it's important that you review the descriptions found on the website. I encourage you to reach out to your chapter members. Talk to the members who've expressed interest in getting involved at society-level committees. Review this list with them, going through the committee tasks, minimum qualifications, and membership breakdown. You can usually find committee rosters online. Reach out to some of the current committee members and get a feel for what their needs are. You or your chapter members may be that missing link that they're looking for to help accomplish their goals. When you come to CRC, have your list of names ready to discuss with the rest of the caucus. We'll be taking some time going through each of these committees so that we can make sure that as a region, we put forth candidates who are prepared to start contributing immediately. All right, well, that's all we have for part 3 covering society level positions. In our 4th and final installment, we're going to be covering honors and awards. So thank you for watching and see you then.